So you have been to Bethlehem, or not
After
yet?
this,
Okay,
right,
so
tonight we'll
you will
stay
be visiting some Palestinian territory, actually, hopefully, during your visit. So, again, I would like to welcome you here in Ramallah. To start with the current situation, just very quickly, then I will leave some space for questions rather than going into details myself. The current situation is still very difficult. Mr. Kerry has done a lot of efforts to the peace process in 2014. Unfortunately, there was no progress, there was no success, and he said it clearly that because of the current Israeli government, somehow it won't be easy to reach a solution for the conflict in the current circumstances. We believe in the two-state solution. This is the only way out as a Palestinian government, as a Palestinian leadership. We know that it is our destiny to live together with our neighbors for our future and for their future, for our kids and for their kids. But unfortunately, we have been spending something like 22 years in negotiations. Myself, I have been participating in those official negotiations back in 2000 during Camp David negotiations, and nothing is progressing. So we spent something like 22 years for the time being, and we achieved nothing. When we signed Oslo Agreement back in 2003, I think, in 1993, we thought that by the end of 99, we should have our own sovereign state. Years passed, but nothing has been done. So this is why we believe now it is a time for a different way of negotiations. To end the negotiation for the sake of negotiations by having more international pressure on Israel. A good example from our side, that was the Iranian case, when the international community, the 3+3, 5+1, whatever they call it, came together and to find a peaceful solution for the Iranian cause. This is why now we are calling for some international pressure. This is why we are seeking, we are looking forward for the French initiative. The French initiative nowadays is calling for an international efforts to put more pressure on the Israeli government, to have a clear negotiation with outcomes, with a clear TOR, with a clear time frame. We are ready to negotiate from the beginning on everything. From our experiences, solving issues should start from the beginning. We can't postpone negotiating final status issues like what we did in Oslo Agreement. Because in Oslo Agreement, we agreed that we'll postpone the issue of Jerusalem, settlements, water, and we ended by having growing settlements. And I hope you have seen some of those settlements while you are going around. You will be seeing it clearly tonight in Bethlehem. We believe that settlements wall will not bring peace. So again, peace could be achieved without having this kind of Israeli measures on the ground. Unfortunately, we have a very radical government in Israel. I'm not sure if you are aware that at least 6 or 7 ministers in the Israeli cabinet are settlers who is living in the occupied Palestinian territory. So reaching a kind of solution with such a government, we believe that it's almost impossible. But still we hope that one day, this is the land of miracles, right, Palestine. So we believe in miracles. So we hope that some changes will be happening, either by having this international conference enforcing some peaceful solution on Israel. We know that the U.S. has a good influence on Israel, but unfortunately we haven't seen this powerful, influential tools or means on the government of Israel. This was happening before in the history. For example, when Israel occupied the Suez Canal, at that time it was only a telephone call from the State Department that you have to withdraw within 24 hours, and they did. So if the Israeli administration have a kind of pressure from the U.S. government, we believe this could be also a tool. But unfortunately, we haven't seen it yet. We know that you are facing very soon these presidential elections, and maybe it is the wrong time now for the state administration to be involved, awaiting for finishing with this upcoming elections. I'm not sure if whoever is winning will do better than Mr. Obama. Mr. Obama was, from the beginning, gave a good speech in Cairo concerning the two-state solution, but unfortunately, even with the Obama administration, they failed to achieve anything. In the West Bank and Gaza is in a very miserable situation. It's almost 10 years now under full siege. Believe it or not, something like 2 million Palestinians who are living in 360 square kilometers. So, according to our statistics, maybe 75% of those people have never left Gaza. So, the question how to give those young generation some hope. Unfortunately, this will be also helping the extremist movements, as you have seen around in the region. Unfortunately, because of the lack of democracy, because of the lack of hope, we have seen people like Daesh, ISIS, which is, we are lucky as Palestinians that we don't have such movement yet. We are trying to control the situation. We are with you and with the international community against those groups, and we are trying our utmost not to see them, because we know that occupation could, unfortunately, could be used, and it was used actually. Even if you remember Bin Laden, when he was giving some speeches, he used the Palestinian cause as a pretext. He said several times that unless justice will be happening in Palestine, no else in the world will be calm, or we should continue our, unfortunately, terrorist movements. So we are hoping that we can reach a very peaceful solution. I know some of our young generation maybe could be against what I'm saying, because unfortunately occupation is a kind of incitement. I know that you have met Israelis. I know that they will talk about incitement. They will talk about security concerns. Unfortunately, incitements, the main cause for incitements is the occupation. If there was no occupation, there will be no incitements. And we see the incitements from both sides, I'll be very frank. It doesn't mean that we don't have incitement. No, we have the incitement as well. But officially, our government is committed. While in Israel, you can see incitements happening from the prime minister, unfortunately, and from his colleagues in the cabinet. So they did incite against Palestinians. And I'm sure you heard yesterday's Bennett when he was talking about the education in the Israeli schools and how they can ignore or should ignore other religions than Judaism. We believe that this is a little bit injustice for something like 1.8 Palestinians, Christians and Muslims who is living in Israel, who are Israeli citizens. In Palestine, we have a very good atmosphere. We live together, Muslims, Christians, and Samaritans. You know that we have a group of Jews who's living in Nablus for decades now, and we live in peace and in harmony. And we believe that we are a kind of one society, and we have no problem with Jews if they would like to stay or to live in Palestine in the future, making sure that they are not settlers and they are not soldiers. If anyone would like to live and to stay in Palestine, he is most welcome. And we have this tradition already, the coexistence in Nablus city. You should visit them next time if you have time, and you will see this group of Jewish who is living in the top of hell of Nablus with a great harmony with the Muslim population in Nablus city. What else? Economic situation is very difficult because of the occupation again. you have seen the West Bank. West Bank is, because of Oslo agreements, still 64% of the West Bank territory is under Israeli full military control. So we don't have access to 64% of the West Bank, which is a small piece of the geographical Palestine. Our natural resources are mainly in Area C, which is under Israeli control. Our future agriculture are in Area C. We are not allowed even to dig a water well in Area C without getting the permission from the Israeli civil administration, what we call it, or Israeli authorities. They are using our water in the West Bank and they are selling it to us in Palestine. So we are purchasing our own water from the Israeli authorities. The World Bank report cited that if we have only access to Area C, if we can invest in Area C, which is 4% of the West Bank only, this will add something like $3.5 billion to our GDP. But unfortunately, again, even our humanitarian projects can't be conducted in Area C without getting the Israeli permits.
Could you tell us also about the structure of the Prime Minister's office and your role and what you think about your position in this office? And
my role? I mean, it's not an easy role, actually, to be a chief of staff to the Prime Minister. But again, we are lucky that we have good institutions, despite that we are still under occupation. We have built our own institutions. We have been, we believe that we are ready for the statehood. The only obstacle is the occupation. If Israel will withdraw tomorrow, we have our institutions ready to take over. Again, I'm inciting not only our documentation, but even the international community. The World Bank in 2012 report said that Palestine could be ranked number 80 in terms of institutions, despite that we are still under occupation, which means we are better than another 80 countries who have been existing since decades. The IMF also last week actually issued a good report talking about the reform and a good management, financial management of the Palestinian government. I know that sometimes you hear about corruptions, misuse, but you can visit those reports by international community, by IMF, World Bank, UNSCO, and you will see how the Palestinian government has been achieving a lot of progress during the last 22 years. I have been working for a while in the negotiation affairs department, so I know how to the play and the game of negotiations with Israel for the last 22 years. I have been also working for the Ministry of Planning as an acting deputy minister and responsible for the planning process in Palestine, because we do prepare our developmental plans on either 3 years plans, or nowadays we are moving to 6 year plans.
Do you ever meet with Jason Ulmer in the U.S. consulate?
Yes.
Yeah, we met with him yesterday.
Oh, okay.
He didn't, oh, no, we brought up your name with someone else. He didn't ask him about you, but he was talking about the state of Palestinian politics and meeting with you all.
Yeah. So I'm available if you have any questions, but you are free to do
One question
whatever.
I'll start out with just is actually we've been talking about the lack of mobility for youth, opportunities in the political system and fresh political parties, or just to have a voice in the state of affairs of Palestine. And I'm so curious to hear, especially with you being her dad and in a position of influence, what Natalie thinks and how you might differ, but why aren't there more opportunities for young people, and how, if you could join a party, what would it be, and why, and are your fellow youth frustrated that there don't seem to be many opportunities or groups for them to express themselves?
So maybe you should start, Natalie.
Okay. I think there are many parties that, young youth have an idea of to join. Me, myself, I'm against belonging to one specific party because I think this helps with the division of our goals. So I don't want to become a part of Fatah or Hamas or Jumaa or any one of those parties, because these are the three main parties. So I don't want to be a part of this division. And I think part of why we're so different, how the government thinks and how the rest of the people think, youth are more, they're more emotional and they're more, logically speaking, the government wants just to make logical and very, very, very accurate, hopeless, very hopeless.
This is great.
Keep going.
A hopeless decision, while the youth have more hope of actually. I wouldn't agree. I don't want to see settlements grow. I wouldn't want to see. I know the government doesn't want that too, but the thing is, they kind of accept it more than the rest of the people. Nobody wants Israel. Nobody would want them after. We're the original owners, and we wouldn't want anyone taking our land away. But the youth are still holding on to the idea that we have. This is ours, and we want it just to be ours, just because that's fair. The government wants more to be
Logic.
Accommodating?
no, not necessarily logical. Yeah.
Like wants to work with the Israelis or accommodate them
Yeah, they
more?
accept them more.
Yeah.
No, but this c'est la vie. This is our life.
Right.
We know that we have to live with them by the end of the day. I know for young generation who have seen nothing except for soldiers, crossing points, checkpoints, difficult for her even to go to Jerusalem. For a young teenager who's almost 16 years old, she is not allowed to go and visit Jerusalem without getting a permit. And it's not an easy thing to get a permit. I know what that means, and we should know, as a government, we should understand those fears of our young generation. We saw the occupation during the occupation period, before Oslo Agreement. We know how this is not an easy thing to achieve peace with enemies. But by the end of the day, those are your neighbors, and you have to live, and you have to... No. Those are our neighbors. We changed our charter. When we started the negotiation with Israel, the PLO has changed its charter. In the charter of the PLO, which was existing from 60s, we did not recognize Israel. Now we are recognizing Israel based on the international UN decisions. So we accept that there is a two-state solution. Otherwise, the only solution remaining is the one-state solution. And the one-state solution will be ended by a new apartheid regime, because it will end by having two systems in one country. And you can see it. Unfortunately, even if you will visit some small Arab villages, either Christians or Muslim villages, inside Israel, you will see that they don't have the equal rights as Jewish communities inside Israel. So we know that some of the Israelis will not even accept that, the one-state solution with two systems, because this will remind them with the apartheid regime This will remind them with South Africa. And it was a failure again. So we know that a one-state solution will not be the solution. What else we can do?
Okay, just how it seems illogical for a one-state solution. It's the same. It's just illogical for two-state solutions. If you said yourself, 22 years of negotiations that led to nothing, why would it lead to something now? If they wanted a two-state solutions, they would have made that possible.
So this is why this is the land of miracles. So we believe we can achieve, still we can achieve. Unfortunately, time is running. We know that. With this growing settlements, they are killing the two-state solution.
Yeah.
Now they are talking about building in E1, which is in the middle of Jerusalem region. This will cut physically the West Bank into 3 parts. So imagine how then you will be able to achieve the unity within the West Bank, even within those 500 square kilometers, 5,000 square kilometers. So a viable Palestinian state should be able to continuous and not separated. Still, we believe that West Bank and Gaza should be continuous. And according to Oslo Agreement, there was an agreement on having a safe passage or a geographical link between West Bank and Gaza, which is not existing from the beginning, actually. But we still hope.
With respect to a two-state solution, what does happen to the settlements, the existing settlements?
This is clear from our perspective and from the international law perspective. All settlements are illegal.
Correct.
So all settlements should be, and it happened when Egypt and Israel signed the agreement during Sadat and Begin time. They dismantled one of the biggest settlements in Sinai. And actually Sharon, who was one of the famous radical political figures in Israel, he was the one who was dismantling those settlements in Sinai. So if there is a will, everything is possible. We know that sometimes, and we accepted what we call it the swabbing. But the swabbing is a kind of modification of the border. So it is not having a settlement inside, in the middle of West Bank to be swapped. No, we accepted some modifications on the borderline as a compromise, as exchange of lands in certain areas. But if this settlement is inside the West Bank, this should be dismantled.
And so there's no feeling of, say, giving the option, right? So you can become a Palestinian citizen, or you can move back to Israel if you don't like being a Palestinian.
Again, we have no problem of having any Israeli citizens
Right.
accepting to live under our sovereignty and our legal system. Then he has to choose.
Right, but I'm just saying, as opposed to dismantling the settlement, saying you can stay or you can go.
Yeah, but legally speaking, this should be dismantled. Otherwise, it could be negotiated how we can deal with it.
Whole process from there. I don't get our country. I don't understand how you could say that Kerry tried to make progress and then we give them how many $1 billion we just gave them this week. I don't understand how they. Can you please explain to me about my government? What? Well, I don't get it.
Yeah, this is difficult actually. Since I should not interfere in other government policies and decisions. But no, this is clear. U.S. has a great influence on Israel. U.S. is a very good friend of Israel.
Right.
We have no problem of that at all. We would like to see those friends of both sides could play a positive role. We know that if there are a will, they can achieve something. But the question, how serious the American administrations were during the last decades. So sometimes you have to shame those who say no for peace. And even Kerry, he said it, but in a very polite way when Israel failed him actually. And this was I think it was his last initiative. He thought that he could achieve something before leaving his post within few
I
months.
think they all believe that. They'll be the one to make it happen.
Yeah, but and we know that there are other concerns. It's inside internal policies and internal politics within the U.S. And this is something that I don't want to talk about, frankly speaking. But we know about it. Everyone around this table should know and can imagine how influential some of the Zionist or Jewish lobbies inside the states. We have no problem with that, but we would like to see those groups also pushing for the two-state solution, pushing for the peace solution with Palestine.
So if the United States is two-faced about this, what is the French initiative?
The French initiative, this was launched in May. They invited 20 international countries, including the states, for a meeting in Paris. The idea of, again, this is following the Iran case. So instead of having only the states as a mediator, now we are looking for having more international players, including the EU, France, Britain, and not to give all the influence to the State Department. So having a group of countries who would lead the peace process and the negotiations between the two sides. Yes, please.
Sir, you spoke to the fact that, for example, President Obama has said a lot of nice things about Palestinian people and the peace process and done nothing. And Secretary Kerry has said a lot of nice things and made a good effort, essentially done nothing. Also, there's all these ideas of American institutions and whatever wanting to spread democracy and nice ideas, nice rhetorical ideas, but that doesn't really lead to anything. So my question is, how can these American individuals and institutions actually regain credibility with the Palestinian people so that we're actually working together toward a more constructive future?
Yeah, this is very difficult, frankly speaking. Again, because sometimes the feelings or the impressions could affect the facts. So I myself was involved in a lot of those, what we call it, second track negotiations. It's kind of exercising, meeting Israeli unofficials with the help and support of some American institutes to find a way out, how to bridge the gaps, how to come together around the same table, how to start. But this is, frankly speaking, without having a serious political process. People don't believe on that anymore. 20 years ago, when we signed the Oslo Agreement, there was a lot of initiatives, what we call it, people to people, students to students, CBMs, confidence building measures, etc., which was a little bit giving some hope to the people, because we thought that by the end of the Oslo, within 5 years we could achieve our state. So when people saw that this did not help them, did not achieve anything, so people now they don't believe on those initiatives. Let me put it like that. This could be only viable if there will be a political support for any initiative. Political support, I mean, from the Israeli government, from our government, and from the state government. Otherwise, those initiatives will not lead to anything. People were happy. I remember once I asked Natalie, would you like to participate with some of those meetings, like Seeds of Peace, Hands of Peace, etc.? And she told me, Baba, no, I don't want. This is a kind of, what you call it in English, تطبيع.
Right. Isn't that like accommodation or?
Yeah. Accepting
Right.
living with.
To situate, what do they call it?
Collaboration.
No, it's not collaborate. Which means that إيش يعني in English تطبيع? You should be better than me in English, Natalie. Which means that young generation, they don't believe in those occasions anymore because they can't see that this will be lead to anything. Despite that, 20 years ago, a lot of people were happy to go and visit some Israeli students, some Israeli communities, to think about the future of the two nations, the future of the two states. But when they saw that this will not lead to anything, they thought, no, we don't want now to go to those meetings or initiatives or camps and just to justify what Israel is doing to our people. It's sometimes the same is happening, frankly speaking, with people, coming from the States. We have a lot of people who is visiting Palestine. Mainly they are visiting Israel. And just for the sake of justifying their visits to the region, they do drop by for a few hours to see some Palestinians inside East Jerusalem or sometimes inside West Jerusalem. This is why I really highly appreciate that you are here today and you are going to Bethlehem and you are not of such groups just to justify their visits to the region. So if you would like to be effective, you should see the two sides of the story. If you would like to play a role, you should see what's happening in the occupied Palestinian territories. Otherwise, if you listen to the Israeli voices only, this will be, distorting your vision. You will see Israel, he will tell you, okay, our security concerns is number one. And I know that we have been negotiating this issue. The leadership here, we told Israel, we don't want a militarized, we believe in demilitarized state. We do want a demilitarized state. We don't want Palestine to be a state with army. They said, no, we don't believe you. Okay, we said, let's bring a third partner. Choose whoever you would like to be on the borders between Palestine and Israel. You want the Americans, you want the NATO, you want the Europeans, we have no problem. Bring any third party. And the Israelis came back to us, no, we don't trust anyone. So, you see, we believe that, and unfortunately they are using those security concerns. I remember a few years ago they were talking about the threat coming from Iraq, the threat coming from Syria, and now those threats are not existing anymore. Iraq is not anymore a threat to Israel. Syria is not anymore a threat to Israel. Even Iran is not anymore a threat to Israel. So what's their security concerns? I have no idea, Frank.
On the Ottoman or the people of Israel, the literature that Janessa had us read, some of the material talks so much about the transformation of people's thinking from the Israel side, who had been very involved with, really brutally harming the Palestinians, but they've changed. They've changed dramatically to the point where they're supporting Palestine. Have you seen any of that, even a small degree, of the thought in Israel, especially those who were in the high levels, who have changed their point of view and are more helpful?
Frankly speaking, not in the last 2 years. This maybe happened during the 22 years, the last 22 years. But it depends on the political environment. Unfortunately, since the last 2 years, the radicalism and the extremism is more and more. Not only in Israel, let me be very clear, because this is also reflecting, unfortunately, on our society. So when radicalism is growing inside Israel, you should not expect that radicalism will minimize inside Palestine. So if people without hope like people inside Gaza, we should expect that the radicalism will be higher. If they are closed in a sieged, actually, in a kind of a large prison, so what do you expect from those people? You should expect more radicalism. Unfortunately, with this government, I doubt if you have 7 ministers who is living in settlements, who really settlers, and who don't believe in the two-state solution. If you have the Minister of Education, one of them, I mean, education is one of the main tools, education and culture. We were using the Minister of Education and the Minister of Culture in Palestine to educate our new generation about the coexistence and how we could live with Israel in the future in a peaceful means. But inside Israel, it's the opposite. They are misusing the Ministry of Education now to grow the radicalism against Palestinians. So what do you expect from even the Israeli young generation? I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Maybe you made an interesting comment about to be effective, you should see the two sides of the story. And that's something I'm really appreciating about our trip. I feel like actually at this moment, the emphasis has been more on the Palestinian story, and that's, for me, it's been an eye-opener, and I'm very grateful because I've been busy with my life and I haven't really been paying much attention. But taking that comment, maybe Natalie, I'd love to hear more from you on that, because I've just heard from your father that the youth in Palestine are not willing to be in those meetings with Israelis to have that dialogue. So what does that mean? Do you know their story? You feel you know it, or?
Well, yeah, I know their story.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's a very. I mean, I think it shouldn't have happened, and I don't think they have the right to do any of what they have done. That's what I think, and frankly, most Palestinians who are not really involved in the government would think, and it's just the people just denying the occupation, frankly. And I would never go to any of those camps just because we search for the word and it's called normalization. I mean, sitting in, having the media show that we're equal sides sitting on one table, we're negotiating, we're playing games, we're now friends, and this just implies that we're equal, and it's more of a Palestinian-Israeli conflict that both sides have the same rights and both have. And it's a conflict, but for me, it's more of an occupation because you don't have the same rights and you don't want the world to think that.
Could I follow up with that? Because with the Combatants for Peace, that's something I really appreciated about their approach, that I think the Israeli side recognizes that the Palestinians aren't at an equal footing, but they call it binational in the way they approach whatever activity they do. They work together and support each other in the activities they do. And I mean, they don't see the outcome, but they're certainly willing to just be proactive and keep taking the next step, and when you say you know the Israeli story, does that mean, from what I gathered from the Bad Yashem Memorial, it has a lot of history to their worldview, and do you see that they have a right to exist, or you want them gone, or
Okay.
what does that mean?
It means that,
You.
okay, I know that they've been badly treated, Jews, throughout Europe when Hitler did the Holocaust. I know they have been, they've gone through a lot, but I also know that the fact that they have gone through a lot doesn't make it right that they have the right to do the same thing to other people. So, even though you kind of feel sympathy towards what they have gone through in the past, it still doesn't make it right that, I mean, their story here in this land, having just the thought of some religious connections back in history doesn't make it justifiable for them to exist here. So that's my side of the story. I mean, I try to understand, but at the same time, it's not justifiable for me to actually cooperate with them. And also, I forgot what I was gonna say, but I had an idea.
You see how Palestine is a good democracy?
Yeah.
So she has the right to say whatever she would like. Inside the government house.
Do you think they should have a state here in Palestine?
No. I mean, I'm being frankly honest, and I think that, well, if they want to make, oh wait, I remembered what I was gonna say before. Okay, so if the British came to America and they said, we want this land now, after, you know, what happened in the history, we want our land now. We have been living here for how many years ago? Also, keeping in mind that they weren't really they were a small group of Jewish people that they think they have the right to exist here, and this is their country. They're only a small group, but the majority were Palestinians, Christians, and just living totally in harmony together. The fact that they used violence, they used occupation, they used every unhumanitarian way to force and make their own country out of a belief. And I mean, I don't know they wanted a shelter, but why did it have to be in a place where people were actually living there before? So, I mean, I try to understand their story, but at the same time, it doesn't sound logical to me what they did, and I can't sit on a table and trying to like them, knowing in the real world we're not the same. I mean, I can sit for hours talking and saying how we want to make it change, but when the real people with the influence aren't doing anything, and I mean, what if one of them grows to be a political
Leader.
yeah, but that's a really very small percentage. When they go when they get outside the camp, when they look at life again and see how unequal, they eventually will lose hope. And I just think it's unrealistic to just sit and talk for hours without any progress.
But if you don't talk to them, Natalie, if you just stay home and have that belief, do you think it would help any more compared to expressing that opinion? If we stayed home, I didn't know anything much about Palestine and Israel. We're reading about it, we're visiting. So I feel like I'm learning. I might go home and talk to my neighbors, even though I might not make a huge difference. But I feel like I'm learning, and I'm trying to help my neighbors learn. And you talking to me and your dad, and us visiting the Holocaust Museum tries to help me understand it. And you have a major knowledge about this to help another young Israeli maybe understand your point of view. Sorry, I'm just.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, a mother.
Frankly speaking, this is the argument that I was using with Natalie when I told her, Natalie, you should participate, because then they should know what's happening. None of them is educated what's happening. I know that still, unfortunately, the occupation is the main incitement. People who lived under occupation will be ending by being Natalie, and still she is moderate, I mean, among others, who will go to the radicalism, who will be starting putting Val and joining ISIS or those stupid radical groups. So I'm sure if there was a kind of ending the conflict, despite that this could not happen within one day, this will take some years to end the conflict. But this will be also helping people like Natalie to encourage her speaking to the other side. But if they think that it is hopeless, no, like Natalie. I said like Natalie, not Natalie.
Can I ask one quick question of Natalie?
Okay, mine's very short. How can Israeli young people hear this story?
Yeah.
How can they hear this?
an American, you guys need to do a better job of PR in the U.S.
Yes, absolutely.
Get your lobbyists like APAC and have us hear your story.
Yeah.
And that's my question.
Normalize.
When I walked out of the Holocaust Museum, that ended, and the establishment of Israel and what went on to create Israel is something these people don't know. No one knows. No one knows where terrorism began. No one knows any of that history, and you could do that. You could make a museum to tell the story of how this happened and how the land was stolen. I mean, to me, that would be a fabulous project.
You need lobbyists to actually get people to go there.
Well, yeah, you need to have a lot of money to make it, but people don't know that story. That's something you can tell
Yeah.
people.
Good.
Anyway, thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much.
Thank
Thank you.
You're not almost 16, you're almost
Okay, great.
26.
I'm already 16.
Oh.